So finally, let's go circle back to Baylor for just a second. As I mentioned, the Bears are making their trip to Morgantown this week. So it's the second trip of the season into mountain country. Obviously, they made that trip to Utah, Chris's home state, to play BYU earlier in the season. So if you include the incoming Big 12 schools, and we'll even let OU and Texas be part of this, they're still in the league. Who would you say has the most picturesque setting or city in the Big 12, and who has the least? Who are you going to upset today?
Well, I think hands down BYU's going to be the best once they join the league. I mean, that's an incredible setting. I mean, you cannot have a better setting than that, right now, up against the mountains.
It isn't so much about the stadium, correct? It's more about the backdrop.
Yeah, their stadium could use some upgrades, but man, what a backdrop. I would probably put Baylor second. I mean,
Baylor to me has, honestly, if you're talking about just the setting of a college football venue, has one of the best that I've ever been to, because and it's just light years from Floyd Casey, by the way, Chris. You never
I watched the game in Floyd Casey.
Okay, good. Floyd Casey was just a big bowl, out in the middle of Waco, and kind of hard to get to. I mean, in terms of just the traffic, and it was a mess. But Baylor, as John said, I mean, being right on the river, I always thought it was genius the way they did the horseshoe, looking out to the river. I mean, it's beautiful. John, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
No, that's fine. I'd probably put West Virginia third. They're in the mountains, so that's pretty good. Worst, I would probably say Texas Tech. I just think it's, the stadium's very nice, but it's just flat out there. There is not just a whole lot to look at. And, the atmosphere is good. Maybe the fans can get a little overzealous at times, but I'd say Texas Tech.
Okay. Chris?
I'm going to agree. I haven't been to Morgantown yet. I'm flying out there tomorrow when John goes. And so I'm excited. I hear we're going at the perfect time with the fall colors changing and everything. So I'll give it a shot once I get out there. But like John said, that setting in Provo, when Darby Brown and I were driving up to the game from Salt Lake, and we came up and she was like, "Oh, I didn't know the stadium was so small." And then we got to it and she goes, "Oh, it isn't small. It's just this massive mountain sitting behind it. Makes it look small by comparison." And for John's point, where the stadium needs some upgrades, I was going to say, I think BYU in 5 to 10 years, when they're in the Big 12, they have that commitment. They're going to start upgrading that stadium, and those fans and those donors and that school are going to do what it takes to make it even better. So I think BYU probably already is number one. I think they're only going to expand that lead over their first 5 to 10 years. And then for worst, I'm going to go with DKR. I mean, it's a cool 100,000 fans is cool. I cannot tell you how disappointed I was the first time I went down there and saw the stadium and campus. My dad grew up in San Antonio. He's been a Longhorns fan his whole life. They talk like it's so high and mighty. I expected it to be just this gorgeous, well-kept. I went down there. I was like, it's a little bit run down. It looks like they haven't been taking care of it. There's not really anything special going on. I mean, I'm sure the atmosphere, when you pack 100,000 fans in somewhere and they do love their team, is cool. But just for a picturesque setting, I mean, I don't know. They can do better.
I completely agree. So DKR was going to be my choice kind of as the worst. And part of it is some of the stuff you mentioned, but also to me, when you have a stadium stuck in a big urban area like Austin or Houston that's coming into the league, it's just not as collegial as BYU and Baylor and Ames and Morgantown, and it feels more like a big city than a college town, And Chris, you're right, they do obviously love the Longhorns, but they're they're, to me, I've also always kind of considered them the wine and cheese crowd of the Big 12. You know, they're a little Laker fan-ish, you know, in terms of we're going to show up a little late, we're going to leave a little early, we're kind of spoiled, and we're not nearly as good as we think we are. And I mean, you know, that they're the Laker fans. And meanwhile, the team that left, that they'll be joining soon enough, A&M, they're just a bunch of nutcases. I mean, you have never seen a more rabid fan base than the Aggies. I mean, they're crazy. But DKR, you know, it's right off the highway. Now, I will say, I have always loved the track stadium setting. It has been a little kept up better, I think. But what I really like about that is we cover the state track meet every year, and the shots, the photos of the pole vaulters vaulting with the state capitol in the background, it looks so cool. It always kind of looks like they're almost trying to vault over the Capitol, you know, or something. It's just that's a cool backdrop, but you don't all really see that at the football stadium. You don't see the Capitol. So yeah, I'm going with you on DKR. I will mention about Morgantown. So Chris, John and I were there once together, and Baylor had a bye week the next week. And we were going to go to a Steelers game on Monday night. So we were going to stay a few extra days up there in the area. It was the Steelers and the Texans, John. You remember that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Fine.
Yeah. And so John actually got a ticket. I was cheap and I got a credential and stayed in the press box. But we had a great time there. But so we stayed a couple extra days, and we're driving in this rural West Virginia area, and you know how John likes to hike, and all of a sudden we see this sign that says the highest point in Maryland. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Maryland.
We were right on the border. Okay. We were coming out of West Virginia, and Maryland's right there. And it was this little trail that took you up to the highest point in Maryland. And these hikers were actually coming off the trail right as we were making this little bend. And John rolls down the window and asks them about it. And they're like, yeah, it's a real easy hike. And John's like, what do you think? And so we pull over and don't ever let him tell you that he's slow on these hikes. He left me behind, you know. It was not that high, but it was still kind of high. I mean, and this dude was just powering up, and I was like, all right, I'll see you in a few minutes, John. I'll be there. But
He must have caught me on a good day.
Man. And it was cool. It was a really picturesque spot, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was really cool. I mean, just kind of out of nowhere, highest point in Maryland?
Yeah.
Maryland.
We just went around a curve, and all of a sudden there was this trail, and it was like, all right, we'll check it out. And yeah, so you got to check that off the list, John.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. A surprise.
And it was really, I mean, I am kind of envious of you guys going at this time of year with all the fall colors and stuff. I remember us, John, driving those country roads and turning on John Denver. And
of course, you have to.
And singing along, and it was awesome. It's what you think of New England in the fall, for sure.
Okay. I was gonna fly into actual Morgantown, and John said, no, you got to fly to Pittsburgh, rent a car, and drive through. So that's what we're doing now, John. So if it's not the most beautiful fall foliage I've ever seen in my life, I will never forgive you.
Well, you know what? You're from Utah. That's a pretty high bar there. So
I think you're gonna be impressed. I don't have a lot of concerns.
I hope so.
It's the ideal time to go.
Yeah, and Pittsburgh, I mean, besides driving through the foliage through West Virginia, that's the place to fly into. It's a
cool place.
Yeah, there's not
You'll be impressed.
Good way to get to Morgantown. So
yeah, that was our layover in Pittsburgh would have been longer than the drive to Morgantown. It was like a 2-hour layover alone. So it's like, all right, we'll take John's word for it.
Yeah.
Well, y'all
I
enjoy.
think you'll like it.
Here's a pro tip: get some pierogis in Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
The Polish dumplings.
Oh,
My wife is her family is Polish, like from way back. But
wait, so is there meat? Like, give me the rundown of what.
so a pierogi,
Yeah, right.
pierogi looks like a big fat dumpling, and it can have potato or cheese or sauerkraut in it. I'm not a sauerkraut guy, but and you generally I eat it as a side to Polish sausage. So
Oh, okay.
and yeah, so my wife's family, Janet, they make homemade pierogis, and they're amazing. You can buy them in the store and they're not bad in the frozen food section, but yeah, Pittsburgh would have some that are pretty good.
Some nice pierogies. Okay, I'll hit that and expense it on the KWTX
Yeah,
card. So
there
I'll get one of every kind.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's a good call. All right, guys, y'all enjoy. I will be here in Waco holding it down. And we'll see how the Bears come out, but appreciate
We'll
it.
send
Chris.
photos. Don't worry, Brice. We'll send you some pictures.
All right. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Chris, for joining us.
See you guys.